Dream of the Red Chamber, Chapter 73.
You know that feeling when you are just like sitting in a perfectly quiet room, maybe you're reading, you're just sort of zoning out, and suddenly there is this loud, unexpected crack from the window.
Well, yeah.
Your heart just instantly leaps into your throat, and for a split second, your brain completely scrambles to make sense of the noise. Like, is it a branch? A bird? An intruder?
Right. It's a deeply primal reaction. I mean, the sudden intrusion of the unknown into a safe space, it forces our nervous system to immediately assess for threats. It
Yeah.
just completely overrides any rational thought you might have been having just a second prior.
Exactly. And today, we are taking you into an incredible piece of source material where one tiny sudden noise like that sets off an absolute catastrophic chain reaction.
It really does.
We are looking at Chapter 73 of the classic Chinese novel, Dream of the Red Chamber, to explore how basically a teenager's desperate lie to get out of a school exam accidentally unmasks a secret underground gambling syndicate.
Which is just wild.
It is. And it leads to a massive purge of an entire household.
Yeah, we are essentially looking at a masterclass in the fragility of complex systems and, the wild trajectory of unintended consequences.
So let's bring you right into the inciting incident.
Yeah.
We are inside this vast, incredibly wealthy aristocratic household, and it is late at night.
Right.
A concubine named Zhao Yinyang is having a private conversation with the patriarch of the family, Jia Zheng. And suddenly, a sharp noise outside the window absolutely startles them.
Just out of nowhere.
Right. And it turns out to just be a broken window frame that hadn't been latched properly. It fell, so it's nothing major. But that tiny physical shock on one side of the compound translates into this massive psychological shock for our main character.
Yeah, a teenage boy named Bayu.
Exactly.
Because the immediate fallout of that falling window frame is a terrifying piece of intelligence.
Right. The warning.
Yes. Shortly after the noise, a maid named Little Magpie sneaks over to Bayu's courtyard under the cover of darkness. And she warns him that she overheard concubine Zhao saying something highly negative about him to his father.
Which is bad news.
Very bad news. The implication is severe. His father's going to interrogate Bayu about his studies the very next morning.
So that physical fragility of the broken window, it perfectly mirrors Bayu's suddenly fragile academic standing.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
We move instantly from a mundane household repair issue to the absolute universal dread of an impending high-stakes test.
Oh, the worst feeling.
Truly. And the text describes Bayu's reaction so vividly. It says he felt like the Monkey King hearing the magical tight fillet spell.
Which is such a specific, intense image.
It really is. For anyone who might not be familiar, the Monkey King is this legendary, invincible, mythological figure in Chinese literature, but he wears a magical golden ring around his head.
Right.
And when his master chants a specific spell, the ring tightens and causes him paralyzing, agonizing headaches. The author uses that specific imagery to communicate just how physically debilitating Bayu's dread is in this moment.
And following that wave of panic, Bayu does what any student facing sudden doom does. He conducts a frantic psychological inventory of his own knowledge.
The midnight cram session.
Exactly. He starts mentally flipping through his syllabus to see what he can actually defend if his father presses him. And he realizes he can recite the Great Learning, the Doctrine of the Mean, and the Analects, even with the extensive commentary notes.
Okay, so that portion's secure.
Right, but then he considers the Mencius, and he admits it is half forgotten. Like, if his father drops a random quote from it, he knows he won't be able to pick up the next line.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and his grasp of the five classics is barely passable.
Which is just the ultimate Sunday night terror. We've all been there cramming for a huge final exam, trying to calculate exactly how much we can get away with not knowing.
Right, doing the mental math.
Exactly. But to a modern listener, hearing a list of texts like The Great Learning or the Five Classics, it just sounds like a standard college syllabus. My understanding, though, is that the stakes here are vastly higher than just getting a bad grade on a report card.
Immensely higher. I mean, these texts were not just literature. They formed the absolute foundation of the imperial civil service examinations during the Ming and Qing dynasties.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, memorizing them wasn't about personal enrichment. It was the singular, brutal gateway to survival, wealth, and political power in imperial China.
There's no pressure.
Right. If you could not master these texts, you could not secure a government position, which meant you could not maintain your aristocratic family status.
Oh, wow.
The pressure on a young male heir like Bao Yu to have these texts perfectly internalized, it was the equivalent of holding the entire family's financial and social future on his shoulders.
That makes his dread so much more palpable. But as he's taking this mental inventory, he hits a real wall. This absolute kryptonite, the eight-legged essays.
Oh, yes, the eight-legged essays.
The text points out that Bao Yu specifically despises these essays, and not just because they are difficult to write, but on a deeply philosophical level.
Right, he hates what they represent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He thinks they have absolutely nothing to do with the true wisdom of the ancient sages. He sees them simply as cynical tools for people to, quote, fish for fame and wealth.
And his hatred is deeply rooted in the mechanics of how the eight-legged essay actually functioned.
How so?
Well, you couldn't just have a brilliant original idea and write a persuasive argument. The format required you to write exactly 8 sections, adhering to a painfully strict structural and tonal symmetry.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. And more restrictively, you could not include your own thoughts or any contemporary context. You had to essentially channel the voice of Confucius or his disciples and argue strictly within orthodox interpretations.
Oh, man.
It was an exercise in rigid conformity disguised as intellectual rigor.
So he is basically the kid in the back of the classroom saying, why do I have to learn this if I'm never going to use it in real life?
That's exactly it.
Except in this case, the rote memorization is actively killing his genuine love for learning. Like, he reads for aesthetics, for emotion, for the joy of discovery. He refuses to memorize rigid structural rules just to prove he can fall in line and acquire political power.
It is a phenomenal critique of the traditional education system of the era. And Bao Yu's internal rebellion highlights a tension that is still incredibly relevant today.
Yeah, for sure.
Think about modern corporate training environments or, standardized testing. There's a constant tug of war between wanting people to genuinely understand a concept versus just wanting them to prove they can comply with arbitrary metrics.
Right. And Bao Yu is rejecting the metrics.
Fully rejecting them.
And because he refuses to play by those rules, he's completely doomed to fail this interrogation tomorrow. His anxiety spirals. And what is fascinating is how contagious that panic becomes.
It really does spread.
It infects his entire staff. Because he is frantically cramming in the middle of the night, his maids are forced to stay awake to serve him. Trimming the candles, pouring tea, standing at attention, they are absolutely miserable.
Because the hierarchy of the household dictates that the master's crisis is the servant's emergency.
Yeah.
They cannot rest while he suffers.
And the scene the author paints is pure chaos. A senior maid named Qingwen is getting so frustrated with the sleepy younger maids that she threatens to physically poke them with a needle to keep them awake.
Which is just so intense.
It is. Another young maid actually falls asleep sitting up, physically bumps her head against the wall, and wakes up crying. The tension in the room is at a boiling point.
It's a powder keg.
Exactly. And then suddenly, a maid named Gold Star Glass bursts through the door, yelling that someone just jumped off the outer wall into the courtyard.
The perfect disruption. An intruder in the dead of night.
Yes. Qingwen, the senior maid with the needle, instantly seizes this moment. She tells Bao Yu, quick, pretend the intruder scared you sick.
She is so fast on her feet.
Unbelievably fast. She realizes this phantom intruder is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for tomorrow's exam. But she doesn't just suggest the idea. She completely orchestrates the cover-up.
Oh yeah, she directs the whole scene.
She intentionally makes a huge scene, throwing the courtyard doors open and loudly demanding soul-calming pills so that the adults in the main house hear about the severe trauma Bao Yu just suffered. She spins a random bump in the night into a flawless alibi.
She completely weaponizes the panic to neutralize the threat of the father's interrogation.
But I have to question her underlying motives here.
Right.
Like, on the surface, it looks like the classic trope of the hyper-loyal servant doing anything to protect her beloved young master's feelings.
Right.
But honestly, it reads to me like pure, desperate self-preservation.
Interesting. How so?
Because if Bao Yu fails his test tomorrow, his father's going to be absolutely furious. And in a highly stratified system, when the boss gets mad at the heir, the punishment usually rolls downhill.
Oh.
The servants are the ones who will be blamed for, quote, distracting him from his studies. They'll be thrown under the bus.
Your reading of her motive actually aligns perfectly with the intense codependency of an aristocratic household.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. The servants' survival, their daily status, and their physical safety are tethered entirely to their master's success and favor. If Baoyu falls from grace, they lose their protective umbrella.
That makes so much sense.
And Kingwin's lightning-fast PR spin reveals a crucial dynamic. The actual street smarts and tactical brilliance in this compound often belong to the teenage maids, not the highly educated masters.
Wow, yeah.
The masters might be busy memorizing the great learning, but the maids have developed razor-sharp survival instincts because they have to navigate the daily reality of this power structure.
They are the ones actually keeping the machine running while the executives debate philosophy. But King Wen's fabricated panic ends up working a little too well. Her PR spin is so loud and so dramatic that it bypasses the middle management and escalates the situation to the absolute highest authority in the family.
Grandmother Gia.
Yes, the matriarch.
And this is where the teenage lie triggers the catastrophic chain reaction. Grandmother Gia hears about an intruder in her highly secure garden, and she is furious.
Understandably so.
She immediately suspects that thieves are operating from within, aided by her own staff.
So she calls a massive emergency meeting, and everyone is terrified. But instead of finding a phantom thief hopping over a wall, the searchlights uncover a very real, very deep systemic corruption.
Which nobody was expecting to find.
No. A young woman named Tanshan steps up and reveals the shocking truth to the matriarch. She basically says, look, there is no thief, but there is a massive gambling syndicate operating inside the garden.
And the context here is key. The usual disciplinarian of the household, a woman named Fengji, has been sick.
Right.
So in her absence, the daily oversight of the staff has quietly collapsed.
And it is staggering how far it has collapsed. Tanshan reveals that the servants aren't just like playing innocent card games for pennies to pass the time on the night shift. There are actual syndicate bosses.
It's an organized operation.
It really is. The gambling stakes have reached massive sums, up to 300 Dayao, which is a fortune in their currency.
Yeah.
It has gotten so intense that physical fights have already broken out over unpaid debts.
Just incredible.
It makes me think of an IT department hunting for a minor software glitch because an executive complained their email was slow. And while digging through the server logs, they accidentally uncover a massive company-wide embezzlement ring.
That is a perfect analogy. And just like that IT department, Grandmother Gia doesn't just patch the glitch, she audits the entire server.
Yeah, she does.
When some of the other family members try to brush the gambling off as just a minor vice used by the guards to stay awake, the matriarch completely shuts that defense down.
She's not having it.
Not at all. The text provides us with a brilliant piece of sociological deduction from Grandmother Gia.
I found her logic incredibly sharp. She doesn't just see a dice game. She maps out the entire architecture of the disaster.
Right.
She states that gambling inherently leads to drinking, as players either celebrate massive wins or mourn crushing losses. And drinking leads to guards getting lazy and leaving the heavily fortified courtyard doors unlocked.
Which is the real danger.
Exactly. Unlocked doors inevitably invite real thieves. And in a garden specifically built to house young, unmarried aristocratic girls, thieves do not just steal property. They ruin physical safety and destroy reputations, which is the currency of the aristocracy.
She possesses a profound understanding of systemic failure.
Yeah, she sees the whole picture.
She knows that you cannot tolerate rot in the foundation, no matter how victimless it seems on the surface, because everything in that ecosystem is load-bearing.
Wow, yeah, load-bearing.
She sees the causal chain clearly. A seemingly innocent vice guarantees the eventual collapse of the entire social and moral system of the household.
And once that systemic rot is exposed to the light, Grandmother Gia violently reasserts control. This leads to the climax, where the investigators sweep the garden and come back with shocking numbers.
The scale of it is just massive.
It is. They find 3 big bosses, 8 small bosses, and over 20 regular players. A fully operational tiered casino running right under their noses.
Unbelievable.
And the punishment she hands down is swift and severe. All the dice and cards are burned, the illicit money is confiscated and distributed to the innocent staff members.
And then the physical punishments.
Right. The big bosses receive 40 heavy beatings and are expelled from the household forever. The followers get 20 beatings, lose 3 months of pay, and are banished to the absolute lowest, most degrading job on the estate, cleaning the latrines.
It is a complete and total purge of the corrupted elements.
But the story introduces a complication that makes this purge incredibly messy and emotionally devastating.
The wet nurse.
Yes. One of the three main ringleaders, one of the big bosses, turns out to be the childhood wet nurse of a young lady named Ying Chun. Now, a wet nurse in this era is not just a nanny.
Oh, not at all.
This is a woman who literally breastfed and raised you from infancy. In many of these aristocratic families, the emotional bond with the wet nurse is actually stronger and more maternal than the bond with the biological mother, who is often distanced by protocol.
They are deeply embedded in the family's emotional fabric, which gives them a unique and highly insulated status.
Which is why several of the most beloved young ladies of the house, Dai Yu, Baochai, and Tenshin, actually step forward during this tribunal. They plead with grandmother Jia for mercy.
This very tense moment.
They ask her to spare this one specific woman simply out of respect for her long service and her lifelong connection to Ying Chun. And grandmother Jia absolutely refuses. She doesn't even blink.
Her refusal is absolute and uncompromising.
And I have to admit, reading that, I really struggled with the morality of her decision. It feels incredibly cruel.
It does seem harsh at first glance.
Yeah, like putting an elderly woman who raised your grandchild out on the street after decades of service, especially when the most beloved members of the family are actively begging for her to be spared.
Right.
It feels equivalent to a modern company publicly firing an untouchable legacy employee who maybe made one bad call but has 30 years of loyalty. I found myself wondering, does the matriarch really need to destroy this old woman's life just to make a point?
Well, applying a modern lens of labor relations does make it seem harsh. But if we dive into the broader picture of power dynamics in that era, Grandmother Jia's reaction makes ruthless perfect sense.
So?
She explicitly states her reasoning to the girls in the text. She explains that wet nurses often use their unique maternal status to manipulate the younger masters.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they use that deep emotional leverage to protect their own flaws, cover up their mistakes, and ultimately cause immense trouble.
So they are essentially using the family's love for them as a shield against accountability. They know the kids won't let them be fired.
Exactly. Untouchable is the perfect word for what they strive to be, and that is exactly the threat she poses. The wet nurses represent a very dangerous shadow authority within the household hierarchy.
Shadow authority.
Yes. They are legally servants, but because they raise the masters, they act as though they operate above the normal rules. Grandmother Jia realizes that if she pardons the wet nurse simply because of sentiment, she is actively validating that shadow authority.
Ah, she would be proving to the entire staff that the system is corrupt at the very top.
Exactly right.
She would be saying that if you have enough emotional capital, or if you are close enough to the right executive, the rules simply do not apply to you.
Precisely. If she grants that pardon, the purge loses all its moral authority.
That makes total sense.
Grandmother Jia is using this crisis to completely shatter that shadow authority. She is sending a chilling, unmistakable message to the hundreds of people living in that compound.
Which is what?
That true power lies solely with the matriarch and the established rules. It does not lie with your sentimental attachments or your legacy status.
Right.
If you threaten the structural integrity of the system will crush you, regardless of whose diapers you changed.
That is incredibly cold, but undeniably effective leadership. It is a brutal restructuring of household power, severing lifelong emotional bonds to protect the empire. And to think, this massive political upheaval all stems from one kid not wanting to write an essay.
It's amazing how it all connects back to that.
Okay, let's shift scenes.
I want you to picture a scenario. Imagine you're living inside this massive, unfathomably wealthy household.
Oh, the kind of sprawling estate where reputation is pretty much the only currency that matters.
Exactly. And the walls are practically built out of secrets. But today, the air is just thick enough to choke on.
Right, because the matriarch of the family, the absolute apex of authority in this world, is in a terrible mood.
Yeah, and because she's angry, this wave of suffocating anxiety has just rolled through the entire compound. Everyone is terrified.
It's a textbook example of authoritarian trickle-down. When the person at the very top is unhappy, the whole ecosystem goes into survival mode.
Every single person, from the highest-ranking lords to the lowest sweeping maids, is walking on eggshells.
You even see family members physically displacing themselves, wandering aimlessly around the estate's sprawling gardens just to stay out of sight.
Just trying to kill time and avoid her wrath. It creates this very specific, tense, quiet vacuum.
And, well, nature abhors a vacuum.
It really does. The architecture of this narrative sequence is just brilliant, honestly. It relies entirely on that pressure cooker environment you mentioned.
Right, grandmother Jia, the matriarch, has forced everyone into a state of hypervigilance.
And into this incredibly delicate, high-stakes atmosphere wanders a character who operates completely outside the established rules.
Let's talk about her, because she is a complete anomaly in this setting.
Her name is Shada G, which translates to Silly Sister,
Ah.
and the source material paints a very specific picture of her.
Yeah, she's about 14 or 15 years old, has a broad face, a stout build, and large, unbound feet.
Which is wild, because in a household filled with delicate, highly educated poetry-writing aristocrats, she is strictly utilitarian.
Oh, completely. She does the heavy lifting, she sweeps the courtyards, hauls the water, all of that.
But her true function in the household dynamics is actually psychological, isn't it?
It is. The matriarch keeps Silly Sister around, specifically because she finds her entertaining.
Right, because she's uneducated, simple-minded, and has absolutely zero filter.
In a world where every single word is calculated for political advantage, her foolish honesty is, well, it's a novelty.
She acts as a sort of court jester. It grants her this bizarre kind of diplomatic immunity.
Because the boss finds her funny, everyone else just has to tolerate her. They can't punish her for lacking etiquette.
Which brings us to the discovery. Silly Sister is wandering through the garden during this incredibly tense day, completely oblivious to the anxiety.
She's just hunting for crickets behind some ornamental rocks.
And while she's digging around in the dirt, she unearths a pouch. But this isn't just some discarded coin purse.
No, it's a brilliantly colored, painstakingly embroidered silk pouch. The craftsmanship alone signals that it belongs to someone of wealth and status.
But the imagery embroidered on it completely shatters the moral facade of the estate,
Yeah, it features what the text politely refers to as a spring picture.
which is a highly explicit, detailed image of two naked people embracing, along with some text.
We really need to be clear about the stakes here. By the deeply conservative Neo-Confucian standards of this aristocratic family.
This object is basically radioactive.
Exactly. Finding physical evidence of illicit sexual activity within the inner garden is like finding a lit stick of dynamite in the family vault.
Because their entire social standing, their ability to secure political alliances and arrange marriages, rests on the ironclad illusion of their moral purity.
And this pouch is tangible proof of corruption inside the house.
Which makes Silly Sister's reactions so compelling to me. She's holding this radioactive object, and she simply doesn't possess the cognitive framework to understand it.
Her innocence is so absolute that her brain literally attempts to categorize the explicit image as something else entirely.
She genuinely guesses that it's a picture of two demons fighting, or maybe just a couple having a brawl.
It's a phenomenal stroke of narrative irony. The most scandalous, destructive object in the estate lands directly in the hands of the only person completely incapable of being scandalized by it.
It makes me think of, like, a toddler finding a terrifying horror movie DVD and just assuming it's a funny clown video.
That is a perfect analogy.
Or someone wandering into a highly secure lab carrying a chunk of raw uranium thinking it's just a neat rock. Why is it so significant from a storytelling perspective that the most innocent, clueless person stumbles upon this?
By having Silly Sister find the pouch, the narrative exposes innocence as a massive vulnerability.
How so?
Well, in a household built on secrets and leverage, innocence cannot survive. Her inability to comprehend the pouch means she has no instinct to bury it or destroy it.
So she just brings the rot right out into the open daylight.
Exactly. It acts as a mirror, and the moment a truly corrupt character looks into that mirror, the innocence is instantly weaponized.
And that weaponization happens almost immediately. While she's cheerfully carrying her neat rock through the garden, she crosses paths with Lady Jing.
Lady Jing is one of the senior women of the house, and she's currently wandering the garden solely to avoid the matriarch's bad mood.
Silly Sister sees her, and when asked what she's holding, she just smiles and hands the pouch right over.
She even dismisses it using a slang term, calling it a dog doesn't know.
Basically saying, hey, look at this bizarre, meaningless trinket.
But the contrast between Silly Sister's cheerful offering and Lady Jing's immediate visceral terror tells you everything about the invisible tripwires in this family.
The source describes Lady Jing turning pale the second she registers what the image is. She grips the pouch dead tight in her hand.
And the very next thing out of her mouth is an immediate lethal escalation.
She looks at this simple-minded 14-year-old girl and threatens her with death.
She tells her that if she breathes a single word of this to anyone, she will be beaten to death.
Silly Sister drops to her knees, terrified, and runs away. That diplomatic immunity she had vanishes the second a real secret is in play.
Lady Jing understands instantly that the pouch represents an existential threat to the household order, But her reaction also reveals her own specific psychology.
Right, because she frightens the girl into silence to contain the blast radius, but then she makes a very calculated choice about what to do with the explosive.
She doesn't diffuse it.
Wait, I really want to push back on Lady Xing's logic here. If this pouch is a bomb that could destroy the family's reputation, wouldn't a protector immediately destroy it?
You would think so. Burn it, bury it back under the rocks.
But she doesn't. The text specifies that she hides it in her sleeve, secretly wondering where it came from, keeping her thoughts completely hidden.
Right.
It feels like she's keeping it as ammunition. Is she actually trying to protect the family, or is she hoarding a weapon?
That is the crucial distinction. In a power-hungry environment, a secret of this magnitude is the ultimate currency.
And Lady Xing doesn't hold the primary financial or logistical power in the household, right? She often feels marginalized.
Exactly. So by slipping that pouch into her sleeve, she suddenly possesses leverage. She doesn't even know whose secret it is yet, but she knows it has the power to ruin someone.
Notice how her emotional state shifts. She goes from stark terror to a sudden, potent sense of judgmental superiority.
She is literally carrying the moral high ground in her sleeve.
And armed with that toxic energy, she leaves the garden and marches directly to the courtyard of her stepdaughter, Ying Chun.
She takes that dark cloud of judgment and looks for a place to unleash it. She seeks out the path of least resistance.
And Ying Chun is the perfect target for displaced aggression, especially since Ying Chun is already having a disastrous day.
Yeah, she's sitting in her room feeling miserable because her wet nurse has just been caught running an illicit gambling ring right under the family's nose.
So Ying Chun is trapped between the strict rules of the household that forbid gambling and the immense cultural guilt of having to punish her surrogate mother.
It's an awful position to be in.
You'd think Lady Xing stepping into this room as a senior mother figure might offer some guidance or, like, structural support.
But instead, she walks in and surgically dismantles Ying Chun's self-esteem. She harshly berates her for being soft and weak.
She warns Ying Chun that the wet nurse, having lost her money, will inevitably try to exploit her soft-heartedness.
She predicts the nurse will beg for jewelry or clothing to use as gambling collateral.
Lady Xing's diagnosis of the situation is incredibly perceptive, I'll give her that.
Oh, she maps out exactly how abusers exploit passive people. But her delivery is entirely devoid of empathy.
She uses Ying Chun's crisis merely as a stepping stone to air her own bitter grievances. Suddenly, the lecture isn't even about Ying Chun anymore.
Right, Lady Xing starts venting about Ying Chun's powerful brother and sister-in-law, Jia Lian and Wang Sheng.
The text notes her deep resentment towards them. She complains that Wang Xime has immense power, that she covers the sky and the sun with her influence.
But completely ignores Ying Chun. Lady Xing is deeply intimidated by Wang Ximing, who acts as the ruthless CEO of the household.
And since Lady Xing can't attack the CEO, she attacks the forgotten stepdaughter. It's a masterclass in toxic displacement.
She even weaponizes her own lack of biological children. She maliciously tells Ying Chun, "I am so glad I have no children of my own to embarrass me the way you do."
Wow, that is a breathtakingly cruel thing to say to an already isolated young woman.
And she follows it up with a deeply cutting comparison. She compares Ying Chun to another young woman in the family, Tan Chen.
Both of these women are the daughters of concubines, meaning they share the exact same marginalized social standing.
But Lady Xing points out that Ying Chun's biological mother was 10 times better in status and behavior than Tan Chen's mother, concubine Zhao.
Concubine Zhao is a notoriously chaotic, widely disrespected figure in the estate, right?
Exactly. Tan Chen had every structural disadvantage stacked against her because of her mother's reputation.
Which makes Lady Xing's point so devastating. It's like having a gold-plated resume but completely bombing the interview, whereas Tan Chen hustled her way to the top despite her background.
She's highlighting that Tan Chen's rise was an act of sheer psychological grit, whereas Ying Chen has simply surrendered.
But isn't Lady Xing being incredibly unhelpful here? She's diagnosing Ying Chen's weakness perfectly, but offering absolutely zero support or solutions.
That's the profound hypocrisy of her behavior. She actively ensures Ying Chen cannot be cured.
Right, because right in the middle of this berating, a servant announces that Wang Shifeng has arrived to pay her respects.
And Wang Shifeng is the powerful sister-in-law who actually has the authority to fire the wet nurse and solve the gambling problem.
But Lady Xing coldly tells the servant to send Wang Shifeng away. She says, "Tell her to go nurse her illness. I don't need her waiting on me."
She actively blocks the only lifeline Ying Chun has. She isolates Ying Chun completely just to maintain her own feeling of dominance.
And having sufficiently crushed her stepdaughter's spirit, Lady Xing finally leaves to go check on the matriarch.
And the narrative immediately springs a trap. The very second Lady Xing walks out the door, her warning about the servants exploiting Yingchen instantly comes true.
The door barely closes before Yingchen's maid Zhuju steps forward with a major crisis. A highly valuable ceremonial gold phoenix hair ornament is missing.
Another maid, Siki, confirms it had been left out in a box, specifically because Yingchen needs to wear it for an upcoming festival.
And Zhuju connects the dots instantly. She is certain the Wetners stole the gold phoenix to pawn for gambling money.
Zhuju represents the appropriate functional response to a crisis. She provides a clear, actionable solution.
She tells Yingchen, "Let me go straight to Wang Nifeng right now. We can retrieve the ornament from the pawn shop, or we force the Wetners to pay for it."
It's a perfectly rational plan. The house is on fire, and the maid is handing her a fire extinguisher.
But Yingchen's response is a masterclass in pathological denial. She vehemently refuses to let the maid report it.
She says it is better to lose the item than to cause trouble.
She engages in this extreme, almost delusional level of denial. She claims the nurse probably just borrowed it quietly and simply forgot to return it.
Forgot a priceless golden phoenix.
It totally reminds me of the "this is fine" meme with the dog sitting in a burning room. Her house is literally being robbed by the person who raised her, and she's essentially saying, maybe they just borrowed the TV.
That's exactly what it is.
Why does she choose this extreme level of denial?
You have to look at the psychological damage inflicted on her just moments prior by Lady Xing. In a rigid, judgmental hierarchy where everything you do is scrutinized, reporting the theft requires Yingchen to publicly admit she was robbed.
By her own surrogate mother.
Yes, it invites gossip, public embarrassment, and the terrifying intervention of Wang Shifeng. The prospect of that messiness is so overwhelming that she chooses submission.
She tells the maid, "Let it go. If we don't wear it to the festival, who cares?"
But the maid, Zhuju, sees the fatal flaw in this logic. She warns Yingchen that if she displays this level of weakness, the servants will eventually deceive and ruin her completely.
If you let someone steal the golden phoenix today without consequence, they will take the rest of the jewelry tomorrow.
And eventually they'll take your safety. Yingchen's conflict avoidance is often misread as mildness or kindness.
But the text exposes it as a paralyzing fear of confrontation.
By refusing to hold the Wetners accountable, Yingchen transitions from being a victim to becoming complicit in her own exploitation.
Her silence enables the abusers. She effectively abandons her loyal maids to navigate a corrupt environment with no protection.
She shuts down completely, refusing to speak, letting the disaster unfold around her. Imagine for a second that you are the manager of a department,
Okay.
and you find out one of your employees hasn't just been stealing from the company, but they've been stealing directly from you.
Oh, wow. That's bold.
Right. And while you are still trying to process this, that very same employee walks right into your office, sits down, and demands that you do them a massive favor.
Are you kidding?
I wish I was. But, they don't even stop there. They actually start acting like they are the victim
Yeah.
of your management style.
I mean, that sounds completely absurd. The instinct for almost anyone in that position would be to immediately call security.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, at the very least, firmly show them the door.
You would assume there's a baseline of self-respect there, right?
Yeah.
But what happens when the person in charge is completely paralyzed by the fear of confrontation?
Well, that's when things get really messy.
Exactly. And seeing the very real, very dangerous consequences of being, quote-unquote, too nice.
Yeah.
So here are the core facts from the source material.
Let's hear them.
Yingchen's wet nurse was recently caught gambling, right? And she's currently being punished by the higher-ups in the family.
A huge scandal.
Totally. Now, the wet nurse's daughter-in-law, she's the wife of a servant named Wang Zhi, has shown up in Yingchen's room. And she has two massive issues she wants to force onto Yingchen's plate.
And neither of them are small requests.
No, not at all. First, she wants Yingchen to go to the ultimate authority in the family, the grandmother, to beg for her mother-in-law's forgiveness.
Wow.
And second, there's the issue of the missing golden phoenix.
Right, the golden phoenix. So this is a gold wire hair ornament belonging to Yingchen, and the wet nurse actually pawned it to cover her gambling debts and hasn't returned it.
So the servant is standing there essentially saying, go stick your neck out for the woman who stole from you.
It's unbelievable audacity.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Yingchen's response to this outrageous demand sets the tone for everything that follows. I mean, the text makes it clear that Yingchen has a well-known reputation for cowardice.
She does, yeah.
Because of this, the servants simply do not respect her, like, at all.
Mm.
So when Wang Zuer's wife asks her to go plead for mercy, Yingchen refuses.
But she doesn't refuse by taking a moral stand against gambling or theft, which is the crazy part.
Right. She refuses because she's terrified of looking foolish. Like, Yingchen points out that even the heavy hitters in the family, prominent figures like Bao Chai and Dai Yu, they were already rejected by the grandmother when they tried to intervene.
Yeah, she basically says, I myself am ashamed enough as it is. Why should I go and ask for a snub?
She is verbally broadcasting her own complete lack of influence to a rogue subordinate.
It's just terrible management.
Which brings in Yingchen's maid, Xuju. And Xuju sharply steps in and points out that pawning the master's golden phoenix and asking for mercy for a gambling charge are two entirely different issues.
She's the only one talking sense.
Seriously. She demands the item be returned immediately before any favors are even discussed. I mean, this is like catching someone driving your stolen car, and instead of giving the keys back, they ask you to pay their speeding ticket.
That is the perfect analogy. And, you know, what's fascinating here is that we are witnessing the anatomy of an abdicated leadership role. Yingchen isn't just avoiding an uncomfortable conversation. She is actively refusing to govern her own space.
She just drops the ball entirely.
She really does. And nature abhors a vacuum, and so do social hierarchies. Because Yingchen drops the reins of authority, Xuju, the maid, is forced to step into that power vacuum and actually do the manager's job.
Is Xuju just instinctively reacting, or does she know what she's doing?
Oh, she knows. Xuju recognizes a classic negotiation tactic being used by the corrupt servant, which is muddying the waters.
Oh, combining the issues so it's harder to solve.
Exactly. The servant wants to tie the return of the stolen gold to the granting of a favor, so Xuju tries to cleanly sever those two issues to hold the line that Yingchen completely abandoned.
So we've seen how abdication creates a power vacuum, but what actually fills that vacuum? Because Yingchen didn't shut this down firmly herself, the servant realizes she has room to maneuver.
She senses the weakness.
Exactly. The servant feels emboldened to completely flip the script. Like, she moves from pleading for a favor to outright gaslighting the people in the room.
The audacity of Wang Zuer's wife in this moment is just a perfect study in corporate survival tactics.
It's wild.
She pivots away from her own guilt by inventing a systemic grievance. She actually starts accusing the maids of being, quote, too strict.
Oh, sure. Blame the whistleblowers.
Right. And then she makes this massive, baseless claim. She says that the servants are actually the ones subsidizing the young lady's living expenses.
Have you ever tried to hold someone accountable at work or in a relationship, and suddenly you're the one being interrogated about a completely unrelated petty cash receipt from 3 years ago?
All the time.
That is the exact mechanism at play here. The servant specifically brings up another character, Miss Xing.
Right.
She complains that the family diverted 1 tael of silver a month to Miss Xing, and implies that because of this shortfall, the servants had to cover the difference out of their own pockets.
Which is just nonsense.
And she claims this supposed debt totals, quote, at least 30 taels. She is inventing a massive, crushing corporate debt to neutralize her own petty cash theft.
Exactly. The psychological mechanism of financial gaslighting relies on overwhelming the brain's sense of fairness.
How so?
Well, by introducing a massive, complex counterclaim, this 30 Taels the Servant forces the listeners to halt their original prosecution of the stolen gold.
Right, because now they have to investigate this new confusing math.
You nailed it. She creates a false debt to make her very real crime look like simple back pay.
And how does Yingchen, the person in charge, handle this blatant psychological manipulation? She hates the conflict so much that she tells her fiercely loyal maid, Xuju, to just drop it. She actually says she doesn't even want the Golden Phoenix anymore.
It's infuriating.
She says if anyone asks, she'll just lie and say she lost it. And then she literally picks up a Taoist book. The text notes it's a tractate on actions and retributions just so she can ignore the screaming match happening right in front of her.
The impact of that single action on the morale of her ecosystem is just devastating.
I can imagine.
The profound unfairness is that Yingchen's desperate desire for peace isn't peaceful at all. I mean, her passivity actively endangers her most loyal employees.
Because they're the ones left dealing with the thief.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Xuju and another loyal maid, Siki, they start crying. And they aren't crying because they're sad about an argument.
No.
No, they are crying out of sheer terror that they will be the ones blamed by the higher-ups for the missing gold item. Yingchen is basically buying her own temporary quiet by using her staff as human shields.
Ugh, it's an incredibly toxic environment. But the noise of this completely unmanaged conflict starts leaking out into the courtyard.
Thankfully.
Right, which draws in the other sisters. And this introduces our foil to Yingchun. Her name is Tanchen.
Ah, Tanchun.
She demonstrates exactly how a real leader dissects a crisis.
She really does. And the contrast between the two sisters is established before a single word is even spoken.
Oh, so?
Well, the source material notes that Bao Chai, Dai Yu, Bao Qin, and Tanchun all arrive. But Tanchun doesn't just barge in blindly. She observes the fight through the gauze window first.
Ah, she gathers intelligence.
Yes, she sees the maids fighting for their lives, and she sees Yingchun lying in bed, pretending to read, completely ignoring the chaos.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Tanchen steps into the room, and she acts like she only caught fragments of the conversation.
Right.
She systematically interrogates the situation by asking seemingly innocent questions. She says, I just heard something about a gold phoenix and something about having no money and asking us servants for it. Who is asking slaves for money?
It's brilliant.
But I have to push back a little on this method. Tanchen clearly heard the whole thing through the window.
She did.
So I don't get Tanchen here. Why play dumb? Like, why go through this highly theatrical, Socratic questioning routine instead of just kicking the door down, yelling at the servant, and firing her on the spot?
Because Tanchen understands a fundamental rule of conflict resolution, which is that volume is not authority.
Oh, that's good.
If she kicks the door down and yells, she triggers the servant's amygdala. The servant goes into a fight-or-flight defensive posture.
And then it just becomes a shouting match.
Exactly. It creates a he said, she said scenario where the servant can later claim she was bullied by the elite class. But by playing dumb and asking innocent structural questions, Tanchen bypasses those emotional defenses.
She forces the servant's brain into logical processing.
Yes. She makes the servant do the math out loud.
And the math doesn't work.
Not at all, because the masters receive a set monthly allowance from a central treasury. They do not handle the household operating accounts.
Right.
Therefore, the idea that the masters owe the servants operating capital is structurally impossible. Tanchen forces the liar to build their own trap out loud, letting the narrative collapse under the weight of its own absurdity.
She completely dismantles the gaslighting. And once the servant is cornered and her lies exposed, Tanchen offers her a pragmatic way out.
Which is key.
Yeah. Tanchen advises her that since the crime is now out in the open, she needs to go confess to the second grandmother, Wang Sifeng, who manages the broader household. Like, immediately.
Confess right now.
Right. Tanchen points out the math of the situation. She says, right now, your mother-in-law is in trouble. That's one person being punished.
Yeah.
But if you try to hide this stolen gold, and it gets discovered later by the auditors, quote, 2 heads will roll. Yours and hers.
That pivot showcases Tanchen's brilliant grasp of risk management. She isn't just trying to win an argument, you know?
Right.
She is giving the panicked servant a clear path to minimize her own damage, provided she immediately stops attacking Yingchen's staff. It's an incredibly sophisticated de-escalation technique.
Tanchen's intellectual dismantling of this servant is just phase 1, though, because right on cue, the enforcement arrives.
Yes, the backup.
A character named Pinger walks in, and the arrival of Pinger shifts the dynamic entirely. When she walks in, one of the other girls, Bao Qin, jokes that Tanchen must have magic to summon spirits.
I love that part.
And Dai Yu, always sharp, says it's not magic, it's military strategy. She quotes the art of war, demure as a maiden, quick as a fleeing hare. You know, the element of surprise.
Pinger wastes absolutely no time reestablishing the boundaries that Yingchen refused to set.
Not a single second.
She scolds the servant for daring to be in the ladies' inner rooms without permission, and she even scolds the maids for not throwing the woman out themselves.
Wow.
She forcefully injects the rule of law back into a lawless space.
And with the perimeter secured by Pinger, Tanchen delivers her thesis. She turns to Pinger and makes it crystal clear that she didn't step in just because she felt sorry for Yingchen.
No, there's a bigger reason.
She says, if this servant and her mother-in-law can get away with bullying the good-natured Yingchen, how long until they come after me? How long until they target the fourth sister?
It's a valid fear.
Tanchen uses 2 very specific idioms here. She says, like mourns like, and when the lips are gone, the teeth are cold. Is Tanjin just projecting her own paranoia here? Like, why does she care so much what happens in a completely different department of the estate?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Tanshin is articulating a profound theory of systemic contagion.
Contagion, okay.
Yeah. The lips and teeth idiom is an ancient concept in Chinese strategic thinking. It describes two entities that are so closely intertwined that the fall of one guarantees the destruction of the other.
Got it.
Tanshin recognizes that the social ecosystem of this massive, decaying household relies entirely on unspoken social contracts. The collective authority of the masters acts as the protective lips.
And Yingchun's room is just one part of those lips.
Precisely. And if the rule of law erodes in Yingchen's quarters, the social contract shifts for the entire estate. Tanshin, representing the teeth, will eventually be exposed to the cold winds of a servant rebellion.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
She understands that tolerating corruption in one isolated department inevitably infects the whole organization. If one manager lets their staff steal and gaslight without consequence, it sets a precedent that endangers every other manager in the building.
What you tolerate in your neighbor's yard will eventually crawl into yours.
Exactly.
So Tanshin and Pinger have swooped in, they've stopped the gaslighting, they've cornered the corrupt servant, secured the perimeter, and essentially handed Yingchen a perfect, risk-free solution on a silver platter.
They did all the hard work.
All Yingchen has to do is nod her head and let them handle the execution. We return to Yingchen to see if she has absorbed anything from this incredible display of leadership.
You would hope she learned something.
Right. Well, Pinger respectfully turns to Yingchen and asks her how she wants to handle this situation.
Right, because she wants to respect the chain of command.
Exactly. Pinger notes that it's an easy fix now, but she formally defers to Yingchen, respecting Yingchen's authority over her own staff.
And Yingchen's response is staggering.
It really is.
She laughs. She laughs and says she has absolutely no idea what to do.
Come on.
I know. She explicitly refuses to punish the servant or the wet nurse. She says, if they return the item, I'll take it. If they don't, I won't. And she flat out states that she will still try to hide the theft from the higher-ups if she can get away with it. She claims she lacks the decisiveness to find a perfect solution that keeps everyone happy.
She's demanding an option with zero friction.
Which simply does not exist in leadership. By demanding a solution that makes no one mad, she defaults to a solution that leaves her own innocent maids in constant peril.
And Dayu watches this stubborn apathy and delivers a devastating line.
Oh, this line is incredible.
She says to Yingchen, "Tigers and wolves gather at the steps, yet you still talk of cause and effect."
That is a piercing critique of relying on passive philosophy during an active crisis.
Yeah, she's basically calling her out for reading that book.
Exactly. Yingchen is hiding behind her Taoist book about cosmic retribution, hoping the universe will magically sort out her stolen gold and her insubordinate staff.
Just magical thinking.
Dayu is pointing out the sheer absurdity of debating philosophy when the tigers and wolves, these corrupt, predatory servants, are literally standing inside your room. Philosophy is useless without action.
And Yingchen just shrugs off that brilliant critique. She agrees with Dayu, but she uses the most infuriating excuse to justify her inaction.
What does she say?
She says, well, even men are like this, let alone me.
Oh, man. This is the ultimate tragedy of her character in this scene.
It's so frustrating.
She is deploying weaponized helplessness. She uses the patriarchal society's low expectations of women as a shield to excuse her own cowardice.
Wow.
She is essentially arguing that since men fail at leadership, why should a mere woman be expected to be brave?
Completely missing the irony that she is sitting in a room full of women, Tanchun, Pinger, Dayu, Shuju, who just proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that women can be incredibly sharp, strategic, and effective leaders.
They literally just did the entire job for her.
Right.
She ignores the empirical evidence standing right in front of her just to protect her own narrative of helplessness. And in doing so, she ensures that the rot in her courtyard will only continue to spread.